Hi, my name is Caroline Knoll, and I'm here to talk to you about MTSS evidence-based strategies and how they connect to mental health and trauma-informed practices. First, let's talk about what MTSS is. MTSS is a multi-tiered system of supports and is proven by research-based problem-solving processes to help all learners succeed. It provides additional instruction to struggling students through different levels that are maybe increased or decreased depending on where they are of intensity based on that individual's progress and taken from data that is collected. MTSS follows a very um, supported model. It emphasizes the principle that all teachers can differentiate instruction to enhance the learning of all students that are in their classroom. The model also emphasizes early intervention and the use of multi-tiered systems of research based on those interventions. It also emphasizes problem solving and decision making. Um, that's an approach that depends on the use of data, screenings, and different progress monitoring of learners in order to assess how effective the instruction is in the interventions. Again, MTSS is a multi-tiered system that's proven, research-based on problem-solving processes to help all students learn and succeed. And it also, again, provides additional instructions to struggling students through increased levels of intensity. I'd like to show this video that kind of gives a very brief description of MTSS and the different tiers that go along with this support system.
Right now, I am enjoying the best chocolate cake. And the thing about this chocolate cake that makes it so wonderful is the multi layers of chocolatey goodness. So let me tell you how this cake is very similar to a multi-tiered system of support. When we talk about creating a continuum of supports for learners, I want to make one thing really clear. Okay. If I had a cake right now, I would frost it to say supplement, not supplant. Because if I'm ordering a layer cake, I don't just want the second layer or the third layer. There's no point in ordering a layer cake if I can't have all of the layers. And in our classrooms today, we need to make sure that every single student has access to best first instruction in tier one grade level classrooms. That is the bottom, that is the foundation for the cake. And some students we recognize will need more than that to be successful. And that is a beautiful part of variability. And so we want to layer on services that students need. So all of our students are general education students first. And some students benefit from special education services or behavioral support or support socially and emotionally. And we have to make sure that we create a system that supports these layers and ensures that students get more and not instead of. Too often we think about tiers as locations. We use language like tier two students or special education students as though they belong somewhere different. If we are to create inclusive and equitable classrooms, everyone needs that bottom layer of support. And when they need it, we have to build systems that ensure that every single learner gets what they need academically, behaviorally, and socially and emotionally. Now, to do this, we have to zoom out and recognize the importance of building teacher competency, of making sure that we have robust implementation drivers like curriculum and scheduling and technology. And also, this requires incredible instructional leadership and family and community engagement. But with all those ingredients, we can make a beautiful layer cake that truly honors all of our students. And you know what? I want you to think about that the next time you have a piece of cake.
So again, the goal of MTSS is that it's standard aligned, it's culturally responsive, and it's a high quality core instruction that helps all students that can meet them academically, behaviorally, and socially. for their needs. I have another video here that I would like to show, and it gives another breakdown of MTSS in about 90 seconds. That gives you a little bit more information on how it is structured.
Think of MTSS, or multi-tiered system of supports, like the operating system on your computer. Just as an operating system helps users organize all their computer's applications, MTSS organizes educators' efforts to provide each student with the right level and type of support. At Tier 1, all students receive universal supports, much like essential programs that keep your computer running smoothly. For MTSS, this means implementing core academic, behavioral, and social-emotional supports for all students to proactively prevent issues and achieve key outcomes. But sometimes users need additional supportive tools when using a computer to complete a task. In the same way, some students might be in need of additional help. That's where Tier 2 comes in, offering targeted supports to address things like classroom behavior, attendance, or mental health. For students with more intense needs, Tier 3 provides individualized intensive support, similar to using specialized software to complete more complex tasks. Educators work together to analyze data, identify needs, and adjust interventions to ensure success. Just like a computer needs a strong operating system, educators need MTSS as a way to organize themselves to meet every student's unique needs, ensuring access to supports that enable students to thrive in school. Think of it.
So again, it's very important that we don't label students in different areas as lacking, but of need of extra supports. So again, this system really allows us to add on to students through different supports in order to make them more successful. By using universal screenings, we can assess all students and identify individuals who are at risk or in need of more individualized support. So, universal screenings data is used in a couple different ways, two specifically. So, first, they're used to determine if core instruction is successful and sufficient for at least 80% of the students. So, a sufficient core is fundamental to the success of those MTSS needs and cannot be overlooked. The district then utilizes, we'll say STAR or any other screening in the district to provide the grades K to 8 with that tool. So depending on what district you work in, will depend on what universal screenings they may use or provide. It is vital that the students are taking these universal screenings very seriously, as well as the teachers who are giving them to the students. So again, MTSS emphasizes the principle that all teachers can differentiate that instruction to enhance that learning. Um, the interventions are multi-tiered and research-based interventions, and it is also based on problem solving and decision making, which then is based on and depends on the reliable data and the progress monitoring of the learners that is assessed to make it effective for all interventions. So on this screen, you'll see a little diagram that allows you to kind of see the back and forth of where we screen, where we progress monitor, what levels go into it, how we use database decision making to have culturally responsive approaches. We integrate students and we use that evidence to base those interventions off of. Some key components of MTSS is, again, collective responsibility. So the belief that all students will achieve high levels of learning, high quality core instruction, that all instruction in academic, behavioral, and wellness. So that could be mental health, monitoring students' progress, practice of reviewing students' data over time to evaluate their progress, making sure that those interventions are working. If they are not, we need to then go back to our wheelhouse, do some more data collection, figure out what could be a better intervention for that student, data-informed decision making across all tiers, That will help inform instruction for students, particularly in your classroom, and early implementation of evidence-based interventions, making sure that we are giving support in a timely manner. Again, we just like in our readings through this course, and it is very important that we catch the signs early and provide early intervention in order to best implement and help that student. And again, it is very important that the family, school, and community are partners. We are working together as a team to make sure that that student is successful. So just a little breakdown. Again, we saw in those videos a little bit ago that, you know, tier one, tier two, and tier three. There are three separate tiers. So tier one is that high quality instruction provided to all students in your general education classroom. And then we move into that tier two, where some additional instruction that's targeted to meet those students' needs may be required in addition to the instruction and behavioral support that's already being given. And then we move into our tier three, which are a little bit more intense for interventions, and those might be more individualized for students. For example, that could include different instructional methods, which I will get into here in a little bit. But if less than 8% of the students are succeeding in tier one, then tier one instruction needs to be strengthened. So typically tier two has about 15% of students, and tier three is about 3 to 5%. So each tier builds upon what's happening in the tier before it. So again, we're not going to just assume that each kid, some kid who is having some really bad anxiety or uh, social interaction there's a deficit there. We're not going to just assume they're tier one. We're going to do those proper uh, progress monitoring, baseline data collection in order to really see what tier they fall into to make sure we give them the best supports. And vice versa. There may be some students that aren't showing a lot of signs, but we have some kind of thought that they may be struggling. So again, making sure that we're doing those baseline data collection for them as well to start the MTSS process in order to make sure that they're successful as well. Some students are very good at hiding some stress. I've seen it many, many times again. So MTSS matters though for mental health because it allows us to support those students with the anxiety, with depression, anyone who's been or had experienced trauma and may have behaviors related to those traumas that they've experienced. It also allows us to improve attendance, behavior, and academic engagement. And then it also reduces crisis interventions through proactive support. So again, if we're being proactive and we're engaging students in the proper way, using the multi-tiered system of supports, then we can reduce the amount of times we might have to respond to a crisis situation because we are using those trauma-informed approaches. So again, my friend Jay Wright here, the earlier educators start using your universal screening data to help students who need differentiated instruction, the better the odds that those students can catch up. So again, early intervention is key. Just kind of want to bring up why we find that educators and families are the most important in the student success when using the multi-tiered systems of support. So again, educators are often the first ones that notice any changes with the student academically, behaviorally, or emotionally. They're the ones who are building that daily trust and relationship with the student to allow that student to feel supported emotionally and safe. They're also the ones implementing the MTSS intervention and monitoring the student's progress firsthand in the classroom, and they can play a huge role in preventing and early identifying. So again, educators are, first and foremost with those students all day, especially with families too, those parents. That's why we say families, they provide critical insight into the student's strengths, stressors, and needs. So we might not, as an educator, see what's going on at home, but those parents and guardians or family members can give us that better outlook on things that they might be struggling with at home or what they're doing well with at home. Um, they can reinforce strategies and routines at home that can carry over into different environments, and those students can generalize those skills. Uh, they can support consistency across school and home environments. Same with educators too. They can vice versa support consistency across home and school environments as well. So families can then partner in decision making and intervention planning with educators and other mental health professionals that are involved. So together, um, their collaboration can increase student success in early intervention. They can share understanding and reduce stigma about that mental health struggle. And they can come together and use trauma-informed approaches to promote safety and resilience in students that are struggling. So healthy systems support healthy students and healthy educators. So again, it is very important that MTSS promotes preventative systems that reduce crisis and staff burnout. It's consistent routines and clear expectations lower stress for both students and educators across the board. That's why it's so important that when you do something like this, that you're making sure that it's being implemented with fidelity across all setting. Trauma-informed MTSS emphasizes regulation over reaction. So again, we're not going to just react. We're going to think. We're going to use that situation, the data, the progress that we've gotten from that situation or situations, and we're going to use it to help regulate the student. And we're going to try and stay regulated ourselves. So first model, then teach. So it also uses those tiered supports to allow staff to share responsibility rather than manage concerns alone. So by collaborating, it's a whole team effort, and it's not just all falling on the teacher. And then supporting student self-regulation also strengthens educator emotional well-being. Again, the teacher and staff's well-being is also as important as the student's well-being and mental health. So before we end, I just kind of want to do a kind of interactive activity. I have a few scenarios I would like to go over with you, and then I would like to kind of see if maybe we can talk to the people that were near, come up with some answers to the questions below, and then we can kind of discuss. So I'm going to read the scenario. I'll give you about a minute to discuss, and then I will kind of go over each question with you. And if you have any questions, we can follow up. So for the first scenario, Jamal, a sixth grade student, frequently shuts down during group work. He puts his head down and avoids peers. His grades are average, but teachers notice consistent social withdrawal. So I'll give you guys a minute to just kind of ponder which tier do you think is appropriate to put the student in? Um, and how can what data would support this decision? We can discuss that too. And then how could emotional safety be increased? So some strategies that we can maybe put into place in the classroom that can allow the student to be successful. So I will give you a minute and we'll come back. About 30 seconds. All right, so let's kind of just go over this. So in this scenario, Jamal would fall under tier two. And some great strategies for him would possibly be small group instruction, checking in and out with him, using a trusted adult, and then possibly some extra social skills groups in order to help with the social withdrawal. Our next scenario. Miss Rivera notices that several students in her third grade class become restless and inattentive during long instructional blocks. There are no major behavior concerns, but students often struggle to stay focused after transition. So I'll give you guys a minute to kind of talk about what tier this would best fit into, and then how could we support the student a little bit more. All right, got about 30 seconds. All right, so let's discuss this a little bit. So again, this would probably fall into the tier one category, and we maybe as a teacher, Mrs. Rivera could have more movement breaks within her classroom to help her students stay focused, using some visual schedules to support students to stay focused and help with transitions. And then also making sure to give those students clear transition expectations so that they know what is expected during transition periods. And then for our last scenario, Sophia, a fourth grade student, experiences emotional outbursts multiple times a day. She sometimes leaves the classroom without permission, which will be considered elopement. Past records note exposure to significant family stress. So again, take a minute. Let's talk about what tier this would fall into and also how we can help her a little bit in the classroom. 20 seconds. Okay, so again, in this scenario, Sophia would probably fall under tier three supports. Some things that she might need to be more successful. Um, should be possibly like maybe some individualized behavioral support plan based on her specific behaviors that we're seeing. Maybe some one-to-one counseling, and then also maybe collaborating with a family and some mental health professionals in order to help the student be successful, especially with having significant family stress in the past and showing very high intense behaviors within the classroom. That is it for today. If you have any questions about multi-tiered support systems, please feel free to ask.